Welcome to the Greener Grass podcast from BlueBird Botanicals. I'm your host, Lex Pelger. Morris Beegle has seen many sides of the hemp industry. He helps to organize the NoCo Hemp Expo in Loveland, Colorado, where they feature everything from farming equipment to the latest and greatest cannabis ingestion technologies. His Colorado hemp company makes a wide variety of hemp products, as well as having a big library of literature. He is starting a hemp podcast called Let's Talk Hemp and the 422. And with his new venture called Tree Free Hemp, Morris is trying to become the first domestic homegrown hemp paper. That old lost art. Today he joins us at the BlueBird studios to share about what he learned over the years about hemp. This show is brought to you by BlueBird Botanicals, to spread education about cannabis and other things on the greener side of life. BlueBird CBD oil comes from farms in southern Colorado and is grown using only water, soil, and sunlight. Go to bluebirdbotanicals.com for more info. We are here with Morris Beegle. Thanks for coming into BlueBird today.
Well, thanks for having me, Lex. I appreciate you inviting me in.
So the hard part with you is deciding what to talk about. You have a lot of different things going.
Well, is that a hard part or is that an easy part? Because we can talk about just about anything.
That's nice that way. That's true. Well, I think the first thing to mention is about your conference coming up.
NoCo Hemp Expo 5, April 6th and 7th, 2018. And we just opened up registration for sponsorship and exhibitors last week.
The cool part is how much the range that it takes. You have a fashion alley all the way to a farm symposium.
Yeah, I mean, well, obviously with this plant, we can cover food, farming, nutrition, nutraceuticals, paper, plastics, building materials, and we cover it all. All things that this plant can do that we know of at this point.
And so tell me how the last year's went, what the kind of flow of these conferences are.
So this last conference, the last two conferences, we've done it in the big building out at the Ranch Events Complex. It's the First National Bank building. It's 36,000 square feet. It's got 2 expo halls, and it's been a 2-day event, Friday and Saturday. Friday is B2B, Saturday is B2C, so it's business to consumer. And the main thing is we're really targeting, 2 important sectors of this emerging industry. The business side has to get together, network, work together, develop relationships, and take this industry forward. And we've done a good job of that. It's grown significantly every year. And the consumer side of it, making people aware of all the things that this plant can do, all the products that are available. And we've done a pretty good job at that. And it's going to continue in 2018 doing the same thing.
That's great. Any features you're really excited about on the upcoming one in Loveland, Colorado?
Well, we are excited about the Farm Symposium. This is a brand new thing for us. There's a lot of interest around the country as this opens up to more and more states. It's going to come off the federal schedule here. There's legislation at the federal level, which, BlueBird is familiar with. We're all familiar with. And either, by the end of this year or sometime next year, I think we're going to cross the finish line. There will be something passed. It'll be available to grow across the United States. And there's a tremendous excitement at the farm level to find a new crop that can hopefully make these farmers some money and replenish their soil and rotate with other crops. And, we're all pretty passionate here in this industry that hemp is the answer to a lot of these farmers' problems. So this Farm Symposium will give people a perspective on what's been done in Europe, in Canada, in China, what's been happening here the last several years, what's happening on an organic front, as well as a regenerative agriculture standpoint, which is gaining a lot of momentum right now.
And so what's it been like for you as you get to meet farmers who might not have heard this before? How are they responding to this crop?
There's a lot of excitement, but there's reservation as well, because you grow all this and where are they going to take it to? Who's going to buy it? And we do have a lack of processing infrastructure, which needs to be addressed over the coming years. Being able to process the stocks, that's probably first and foremost the biggest problem. It's an expensive setup to process stocks and turn that either into textiles, which we won't see here in the United States for a long time because all the textile stuff is basically done in Asia. But there's non-woven fiber materials, composites for car paneling, bioplastics, building materials, paper, nanotechnology with fiber. So there's, a lot of potential that goes with that fiber and herd side. As far as food goes, dehulling and pressing for oil, that technology is available. That's getting set up in different areas around the country. We've got it here in Colorado. It's in Kentucky. It's in Minnesota. It's in North Dakota. And the extraction technology, obviously, that's been pretty available because of all the things going on in cannabis and then all the other botanical extractions that are out there. And that technology has been developed for decades. So that's a pretty easy one, and that's the low-hanging fruit at this point.
And so of all those different applications, are there any that you see really seems to grab people in all the different places you get to?
Well, I think it's interesting because different things grab different people. And some people gravitate towards the fiber side or the apparel side, the paper side. It's like, wow, you can do all this. And, why are we making paper with trees and chopping all these things down? Or fuel, why are we continuing to suck fuel out of the ground when we can grow it from the ground with biofuels that could potentially fuel our future? So, and then there's the food and nutrition side. I mean, hemp's a superfood. And now with the CBD and cannabinoid and extract side of it, it's like it's a super nutrient as well. So it depends on, what your background is and what your interest is. But I think it's got quite broad appeal. And once people really find out about it, it's like, wow, this plant can really do all these different things. I didn't know it was true, but now I know it is true.
And so how did you come to figure this out? How did you get into this industry, in this world?
So I come from the music industry, and I've been in the music industry since the late 80s. And I was working for a company based out of Michigan, but I was in Atlanta for 5 years and California for 4 years between 1986 and 1995. And when I moved back to Colorado, I moved to Fort Collins, and there was a store there called The Emperor's New Clothes, a hemp store that was based on the Jack Hare book, The Emperor Wears No Clothes. And I started hanging out there as I started my music production company, Happy Scratch Records, which did all kinds of services for the entertainment industry and bands and labels in particular. We did CD and DVD manufacturing, packaging, printing, T-shirts, posters, booking, events, publishing, licensing. So we ran the gamut, kind of a one-stop music service. But when I started that, I started hanging out at this store in Fort Collins, the Emperor's New Clothes, and I read the Jack Hare book, and I started to buy some hemp hats and hemp shirts, and didn't really do much with it at the time, other than I kind of learned about, wow, hemp can do all this different stuff, and hemp is cannabis, marijuana is cannabis, it's all one plant. But I wouldn't consider myself a hemp activist or a hemp, involved in the hemp industry at that time. I just became familiar with it. And I always held it with me because I'm a cannabis proponent. I believe in the full legalization of the plant. I've used cannabis for quite some time. And so whether it's recreational, medicinal, or industrial, agricultural, nutritional, whatever you want to call that, non-psychoactive side, I'm for the full plant. And so that's where I got educated, but I didn't really jump into everything until 2012 when Amendment 64 came to pass here in Colorado, and there was a clause in there for Colorado farmers to start growing industrial hemp. And it's like, I'm going to start a hemp company because the music industry, by that time for me, being in the production side and physical media side, had really died and basically shifted my interest to trying to find something else to do. I mean, CDs were dead. Internet killed it, whether that you can attribute that to Napster and mp3.com and peer-to-peer file sharing. But the death of the music industry happened with the internet. And so it's like, which in a way is a good thing, because producing so much physical media for so long, jewel cases, plastic CDs, and how much of that stuff ends up in landfills, this was one of the turning points for me, because I can't tell you how much I've been involved with contributing to the landfill with this plastic. And I'm just a little independent guy in the major labels and some of these huge corporations that have just filled landfills with this plastic stuff by, hey, let's produce all this stuff because somebody's going to consume it. And the consumption of what the human race does with some of this stuff, I mean, we just really have to change our perspective and look at what we're doing and find better ways to do it going forward, because our planet is getting really tired of what we're doing to it. And I think this plant can help change people's minds. It helped change my mind.
And so how did you come to select paper out of all those and start the hemp stalk paper company?
So with the paper, when I started Colorado Hemp Company with my partner, Elizabeth Knight, she's my partner. We've known each other for probably 7 or 8 years now, 9 years. And the first thing we started on was T-shirts and hats. And then I found a company called Greenfield Paper who was making a hemp paper. And there was another paper company as well that had went out of business, I think, in 2008, 2009, Living Tree Paper, who had a little bit of hemp, like 5 to 10% in the paper that they were making. But I found this Greenfield Paper company, and coming from the printing industry, making CD packaging and DVD packaging and doing posters and business cards, and I've done a lot of commercial printing. It's like, here's a paper. Nobody's really pushing this aspect of it. And I started testing it on a variety of different machines because it's a natural paper. It's not coated. Certain machines it doesn't reproduce that well on. It's a little bit trickier. And I spent, a couple years really dialing it in and finding the right machines. And through that, we built treefreehemp.com. So it's really about the printing side of it. I come from the printing angle, not the paper angle, but I've learned a lot about the paper. And through that, we partnered with Pure Hemp Technology out of Fort Lupton, who had Colorado hemp, and they process it through a biorefinery. They can create pulp, lignans, and sugars, and we took some of their pulp, and then we partnered with a company in Boulder and did a handmade paper and made this hemp stock paper. So it was more or less doing a proof of concept to, hey, we're going to have the very first Colorado homegrown, processed, manufactured, and printed paper. So that's where hemp stock paper came from.
That's great. How did that first run go for you?
It went really good. And it was a 50-50 blend of pure hemp pulp and post-industrial recycled material sourced right in Boulder. So it's about as eco-friendly a paper as you'll find anywhere.
That's great. And it's a long tradition. Apparently the first book ever printed was the Diamond Sutra in 6th century, and it was on hemp paper.
Well, hemp was the first thing that they created paper with in China. It was the first material.
That must be nice to be joining that legacy and bringing it back.
Yeah, and really we have to look at how we can reintroduce hemp, flax, canaf, all these natural fibers that grow in a year, where we can produce a lot more biomass that can go into whether it's paper or building materials compared to what it is with trees. Trees, these tree farms, they take anywhere from 8 to 12 to 15 years to grow. You'll see memes out there that says 30 to 50 years. And, there's old stuff that gets chopped down too. But like these tree farms that are grown for this stuff, it's all GMO trees. Nothing lives in those areas. I mean, the ecosystem is dead other than those trees growing there. And if we utilize crops, again, hemp, canaf, wheat straw, flax, there's a variety of different things that we can grow on an annual basis that we can put into this, and we can utilize with post-consumer or post-industrial recycled materials, and we don't have to chop down trees specifically for a lot of this stuff. And it would make the planet happier. I guarantee it.
And you're also selling copies of the U.S. Constitution through these businesses, which was originally also a hemp product.
Yeah, so we did a pocket constitution that's all printed on hemp, and then we also have a Declaration of Independence, and it's the Declaration of Independence that was drafted on hemp, but it wasn't done on, the final one was not on hemp, it was on parchment paper.
And what else does the Colorado Hemp Company have, products that you'd like to feature?
So we've got T-shirts, we've got hats, we sell some books by Doug Fine, Hemp Bound, and First Legal Harvest. We printed the First Legal Harvest book for him. It's actually a 28-page monologue. And Doug's participated at NOCO Hemp Expo every year. The very first NOCO, he released his book, Hemp Bound. And since then, me and Doug have become really good friends. He participates in most all the events that I'm doing if he's available. He's a true ambassador for this plant, not only domestically but globally. So you need to have Doug on your podcast sometime too, because Doug's awesome.
That sounds great. And you're beginning the podcast yourself now with one of the best names I've heard out there. Let's Talk Hemp and the 422.
That's right. So Let's Talk Hemp is our education entertainment side of our events side. So it's a kind of a standalone brand, and all the panels and presentations that we're doing at our events are kind of rolled under this Let's Talk Hemp moniker. And now the 422 is the podcast that we're launching. And instead of kind of the typical, hey, it's 420, well, Earth Day's 422, and every day is Earth Day. So 422 and every day is Earth Day. That's where it comes from.
That's great.
That's what it is.
Any favorite interviews that you've done so far?
So we rolled this out, and it was kind of done to anticipate to do it weekly, and it was more challenging production-wise than I thought it was going to be. And time-wise, I've been really busy with a variety of events. So it's been in beta mode. We're going to launch in January with a full list of different interview people. But initially when I did it, Rick Trojan was the first guy that I interviewed, and then John Patterson from Tiny Hemp Houses. And then I interviewed Bill Billings, and that interview, unfortunately, we had a bunch of background noise, and he was sitting there tapping on the table, and it picked up everything. And me and Bill are going to re-record that interview over. But Bill is from Colorado Hemp Project, and we throw an annual party called Hemp Harvest Party that was in the middle of October. And so this was the 4th annual one, and we did an interview for that. And anyway, it didn't come out, and I didn't get to broadcast it, but me and Bill are going to redo that.
Yeah, fidgety people can be tough to have to sit down with for these things.
Yeah, if you sit there and you're tapping your fingers and you got your microphone on and you can hear every single one of those taps, it's like, no way to edit those things out, really.
And so you've been busy with other stuff. You just got back from Poland and Hemp 2020?
Yep, Hemp 2020 Business Summit in Poland, and that was over October 20th and 21st at the Naklo Palace, which is hosted by Kurt Rayer from hemptoday.net, and hemptoday.net is the global source of hemp information. They RS feed a lot of stuff, and they're really about the best information source out there for what's going on in the global hemp market.
And what was the name again? People can follow?
hemptoday.net.
There we go.
And that's an annual event. This was the second one, and there was 30 of us coming from like 14 countries, I believe. So it was a really good gathering. 2 days, several presentations. I got to do a presentation, Preston Whitfield and Rick Trojan, all representing the United States, and trying to tie the global partnerships, starting the conversation to get some things dialed in where with the U.S. coming online, how can we jumpstart this industry, bringing some technology that the Europeans have, Canadians have, Chinese have, but there's particular stuff from the European side with harvesting equipment, planting equipment, some genetics, as well as processing technology for the fiber side of things, for bioplastics and building materials. And if we can enter into some relationships with these folks and license their technology and bring that over here and make it cooperative, it's really going to help A, the U.S. market, and B, the global market. So that's what we're hoping to do, and we're going to continue to facilitate these conversations and try to, connect the dots around the world.
And do you think out of those different things you mentioned, is it the processing technology where the United States is the farthest behind on those things?
Yeah. If we're going to turn this up, I think we grew almost 25,000 acres this year, which is quite a bit for sure. I think Europe is, still under 100,000 acres, and Canada's under 100,000 acres. I don't think it's going to take long for us to catch up to that, but to catch up to that, we have to have some pretty good processing in place and some infrastructure being built out to be able to handle that type of acreage for sure.
And so that speaks to your work in politics and going to D.C. and doing lobbying. How's that been to get into that world?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I don't consider myself the guy that wants to really go and play the political game and do lobbying. I've done it the last few years, and it's cool to go up there and do that. I felt pretty dirty being in D.C., honestly. I think that our system is so corrupt, and these politicians really just cater to, who's lobbying them. It's like they spend half their time on their knees with knee pads blowing for money. And we have to do the same thing, really. It's unfortunate that our system is like that, but I'm learning a lot about it. And there's people that are doing a good job, and people that are more attuned to doing that. I consider myself more of a music promoter, kind of like a Bill Graham of hemp, where I'm here to promote hemp in general, companies doing the right things, the technology, the benefits of the plant, and just promote that this is the right thing for America. It's the right thing for the world. Should not be illegal, should have never been illegal. There's no health risks with it. There's only benefits health-wise. That's what I'm here to promote. And, if politicians hear that message coming from me honestly and it sways their opinion, that's great. If they want to hold on to some of these misconceptions and misinformation that they've been, basically brought up with and told their whole lives and not change their mind, and I don't know if there's anything we can do with those folks other than just get them out of office, and eventually they're going to disappear.
Politics advances one funeral at a time.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. I like that.
And if you were put in charge, what laws would you be most interested in changing to help the U.S. market?
Well, I would deschedule cannabis altogether, whether I could do that as president of the United States or not, I don't know. It seems you got to change a lot of minds up there on Capitol Hill to make something happen. But I would make sure that industrial hemp would be available across the board, across the country as an agricultural crop, and it would be regulated under the USDA as any other crop, corn and soy and wheatgrass, strawberries, whatever other crops are out there. That's the way this crop should be treated. All parts of the plant, all compounds, everything 100% would be legal.
And that speaks to what can be so tough, is it's such a great agricultural product and it can be regulated that way, but it can also be regulated like an industrial product or a consumer product or a medicine or a recreational intoxicant. And it must be hard for these politicians to even get their heads wrapped around, how do we solve this problem? There's nothing quite like this out there.
That is true. It's a very complicated plant when you look at it from a regulatory standpoint. And I think, like Bob Hoban says, he sees three markets for it. I mean, he sees the recreational market, he sees the pharmaceutical market, and then he sees this agricultural market that is all things industrial, non-psychoactive, and that includes the natural products market with the extracts, all through the food and all through the industrial side. So I'm pretty sure that's the way he views it. That's really the way I view it. I guess I view it more as that industrial side, including the extracts and therapeutic side, than the medical side that's really medicinal marijuana, medicinal ganja, medicinal cannabis, and then the recreational side. And then I would throw in the pharmaceutical side, but maybe that pharmaceutical side is taking over the medical side, because the medical and the recreational side seem to be at odds with each other all over the place. Wherever recreational is coming in, it kills the medical market and the patients get screwed. And I've never really been involved in that side. There's a lot of angst between those two camps. And there's angst within our own camp here on the industrial side. And if we can get rid of some of that angst within our own movement, because we're all fighting, the same thing out there, that same force that the government and corporations and the people trying to continue to make this plant prohibited. We have to end prohibition, and that means all of us have to unite in some general way that, hey, this is who we're fighting. We're not fighting each other.
And what are some of those issues within the industry where it's been hard to find agreement?
Well, I think there's people out there that look at other people as too compromising. They're getting into bed with politicians, or they're fighting for the wrong things that are going to overregulate the plant. And there's, arguments on all sides of this. I mean, again, it's a complicated process and it's a complicated topic when you look at all different facets of it. So I think it just comes down to having good open discussions and not getting mad at each other for having different opinions. We can agree to disagree on several things, but in the end, it comes down to honoring the plant and what's going to be the best position for the plant as it stands to the earth and to humanity and how it can best benefit us. That's the starting point I want to look at. And when it comes down to it, I mean, there's got to be some regulation. There's certainly regulation on the recreational side, but on the agricultural and industrial side where we basically sit, I think it needs to be regulated just like a regular ag crop, and it doesn't need to be over-regulated. And the FDA and the DEA really need to stay. The DEA in particular has to stay out of it. They need to be done with this crop and just get out. FDA, they're going to be involved. It's human consumption, but they need to be treating it like it should be, and that's as a superfood. It's a food ingredient, and doesn't matter if it's got CBD or CBN or any of these other cannabinoids in it. Non-psychoactive, good for the body, not going to be given away to the pharmaceutical industry. It's for everybody to consume, just like they would a multivitamin or a extract that's a health supplement. Everybody should have the option to do that.
And then one last question for someone out there who is listening who got really excited hearing about all these options. What would you recommend for someone who wanted to get somehow involved in this industry?
Come out to NOCO Hemp Expo first and foremost, because you'll get to meet all kinds of people involved in the industry, lots of companies, see lots of speakers and educators, and find out all kinds of good information. That's a good place to start. And there's other events as well. I would say just start dialing into people that are doing events and get involved with the Hemp Industries Association. Look into the National Hemp Association and start making contacts and doing your research and seeing what this plant can do and what's being done with it in Canada, or what's being done with it in Europe, what's being done with it in China. There's information out there if you want to spend some time researching it.
Any last words you'd like to share about the plant?
Well, we're here to fight for the plant, and we've got one mission, and that's to end prohibition.
Morris, thank you so much for your work, and thank you for taking time to come in here and talk with us today.
All right. Thank you, Lex, and keep up the great work at BlueBird. You guys are doing amazing things here.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Greener Grass is a BlueBird Botanicals podcast. Their CBD oil supports a healthy body and a strong endocannabinoid system. They've got friendly customer service who can answer any of your questions, and the number is right there at the top of their webpage. But, per the FDA, they won't be able to make any medical claims for these nutritional supplements. That's also the reason you'll hear little about CBD on this show. There's no need for us to add more evidence about CBD when a simple Google search will give you more than you can read in a month of Sundays. So this show covers the cannabis world and more with editorial freedom from BlueBird Botanicals. Thanks for joining the Greener Grass podcast. As always, our audio alchemist is Matt Payne. The Gypsy Jazz theme music comes from Brett Van Donsel. Our beautiful bird sounds are courtesy of Lang Elliott. And I'm your host, Lex Pelger, wishing you a bright green day.